Hello, I'm Lorna Cole. I'm a senior ecologist at SAC. Here we're at Low Pinmore Farm, and this is one of the farms that the Scottish Wildlife Trust are working with to try and promote pollinator resources in their network. One of the focuses at Low Pinmore is restoring and regenerating hedgerows. Hedgerows, they symbolise our countryside, but they do more than that. They sequester and store carbon, helping us offset greenhouse gas emissions. They also slow water flows and they can trap sediment, reducing runoff from fields. Hedgerows will stockproof fields, and they also provide shade and shelter for livestock. And this not only promotes animal welfare, but it can also enhance production. For example, it can reduce exposure in newborn lambs. Above all, hedgerows are known for their benefit to wildlife. They produce berries and nesting sites for a variety of birds and mammals. They produce overwintering sites for predatory beetles such as ladybirds, and also overwintering sites for butterflies. They also provide floral resources for pollinators and nesting sites for bees. Not all hedgerows are equal. The value of hedgerows depends on their management. So typically a good hedgerow will be tall, it will be structurally dense, there'll be not much gaps at the bottom. There'll be a boundary strip of vegetation which will provide a range of different floral resources. And tall, structurally dense hedgerows are good for the environment, they're good for biodiversity, and they're good for production.
My name is Lynn Bates. I'm the Scottish Wildlife Trust Nectar Network Coordinator based here in Ayrshire, and today we're at Low Pinmore Farm with one of our great partners, Amy and Craig, and we've been working with them for the last couple of years. I'll work with Amy and Craig at looking at the hedges and improving them. When there's been a lot of gaps in the hedges, one of the things you could do is coppice. So if they're fairly old, becoming more like trees, you could coppice them and allow them to sprout again from the base, or you could cut it almost all the way through and lay over to do a traditional hedge laying. So laying a hedge is quite a skilled technique for sure, and it's becoming more popular again, thankfully. But traditionally you would lay it, you would cut it maybe nearly all the way through, two-thirds of the way through, and lay it over, but then you'd be binding it and using stakes to control it, to hold it there. There is also a much more modern way, lots of research going into conservation hedge laying, wildlife hedge laying, which is a lot simpler, a lot quicker, therefore a lot cheaper, where literally you're cutting the stem almost two-thirds of the way through and just literally pushing it over, laying it over, not reducing any of the vegetation within that, on that hedge. So there's lots of research going on at the moment to show the benefits of that. Really, if a hedge becomes beyond restoring, or you're wanting to plant a new hedgerow, then really there's three things you want to be thinking about: is locally sourced trees as much as possible, really thinking about the provenance of them. Also grazing, being aware of livestock grazing, but also deer grazing, so protecting them. There's lots of different ways you can do that. And finally, be thinking about diversity of species. So, your hawthorns, your blackthorns, really getting a mix of species in there, which will prolong that forage for pollinators and be much better for wildlife. I think the main top tip really is to cut less frequently. So, really think about maybe every 2 or 3 years. On top of that, think about allowing the hedge to get much higher and wider so that you're increasing the benefits of that hedge to you. And thirdly, think about not cutting them all at the same time. So you may be rotating every year you cut different hedges. So you've always got something in flower and some forage available there. So you want to think about staggering the cutting, because to increase the flowers and the berries on the actual hedges, because they don't flower on the first year growth. Most hedgerows of species will flower on the second year growth. So by staggering it and allowing the 2 or 3 year difference between the cutting, you're getting the flowers and the berries for the wildlife.
Well, we are new to farming. We bought the place and moved in 2019, and we were keen to sort of restore the burn area at the farm and some of the kind of wilder sides of the farm. And it was clear that the hedgerows were one of the best ways to do that, and one of the most diverse areas per metre squared that we had.
Before we got involved with Nectar Network, we did plant our own hedge, and we didn't have protection up, and we've had to battle with the deer and hare nibbling away at it.
One of the hiccups, we wouldn't quite call a hiccup, that we experienced was being a small farm. A lot of our hedgerows are shared hedgerows, so we have 3 different neighbours that we have to correspond with and work out the logistics of doing some of the advice that we have from Lynn. Some of the changes that we've noticed over the time have been just sort of more birds. The roses have been spectacular in the existing hedges this year, providing a lot of extra fruit that wasn't there in our first couple of years of living here. Even the neighbours actually have noticed some of the extra diversity underneath the hedges, a lot more wildflowers and the occasional barn owl.